Hi, it's Jen from Jen's Homemadeology, and today we are going to be making the VentureTote from Sewfisticated Craft Designs. This tote is the perfect blend of functionality and style to embrace whatever adventure you are on. The VentureTote features adjustable straps, 2 slip pockets on the exterior, 1, 2, along with a luggage sleeve, a front zipper pocket, a D-ring attachment, the inverted V base, which allows it to hold up for easier storage when not in use. It features a magnetic closure. It has a snap sleeve slip pocket that you have the option of making padded. So this could be a laptop sleeve for devices. There's also a divided slip pocket on the opposite panel, a key leash, a zipper pocket with a zipper overlay, and then it has 2 amazing drink holders. With these drink holders are my favorite that Jassy has done because they hold a fabulous 40-ounce tumbler without any issues, and it's nice and secure in there. I can take my water bottle everywhere. And one of the things that makes this bag truly amazing, this design, is this foldable base. And this bag is finished with a drop-in lining. However, you can do a birthing method with it, which is what I did on this bag. And you will birth it through the zipper pocket. Ends up the same height and all, just different ways of finishing it. And then once you have with the adjustable straps, you can have it for a hand carry, or you can adjust it, make it longer for your shoulder carry. And then if you don't like as wide of a tote, what you can do is fold in these sides. And it makes for a slimmer carry bag. And then when you open it, it still allows you to use all of that wonderful room. In today's tutorial, we'll be sewing this VentureTote using a water-resistant canvas, vinyl, some vibrant hue, and then also I use some twill for the pocket linings. And I will be showing how to do the drop-in lining with this tote towards the end of the tutorial. When I do the final assembly for the drop-in lining, I will show the birthing method that I did for this tote, so that those that are wanting to do the birthing method will be able to see it. There's just a few different steps that you would follow in order to be able to birth it versus doing the drop lining. This pattern is rated an adventure beginner, mainly just due to its size. And then my biggest tip before you get sewing is that your sewing space has a good amount of clearance around the back side of your sewing machine, so that a way you have enough room to move through your panel from beginning to end and not having to worry about keeping straight stitches and if your panel is going to bump into something at the same time as it's going through. And now we are going to get started sewing our adventure tote. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Go ahead and run through the pattern pieces for the venture tote. First off, you would need 2 exterior pieces of piece A. If you are doing the option with the front zipper, you will need 1 cut to the pattern piece with the solid dash line to make your zipper pocket, and then your back to the dash line. So you have non-zipper pocket on the back and then a zipper pocket one on the front, or if you're doing the quilted version, it would be 2 of the ones without a zipper. And then you would need 2 pieces of A4, which are your stabilizers for your front and back panel. Again, if you are doing one that has the front zipper, you will need to cut one of them down to the red dash line to make your zipper pocket for your stabilizer, and then another one to the red solid line for your back panel without the zipper pocket. Or if you're doing the quilted version, reading page 7 of the instructions for your stabilizers, and these will be adhered to the back before we get started. You would need 2 pieces of AA, which is your top accent panel for the exterior, along with your 2 stabilizer pieces, which are AA1. Then for your exterior panel for your slip pocket, you will need 2 pieces of B, and then 2 pieces of lining material of B1. These will be the slip pockets on the front of your panels. And then there's piece D, which is your interior main panel lining, which you need 2 of. And then for the side panels, you will need 2 pieces of piece E. This is also a lining material. Piece C, which is your panel base. This preferably should be done out of a lighter weight material. This piece right here is your inverted V base. So it is the foldable base. So if you use it out of vinyl, your vinyl could potentially deteriorate over time from being folded so often, and your bag also won't lay as flat if you use vinyl. And that was piece C. And you will need, for your interior slip pocket, your interior slip pocket can be used for tablets. So there is an optional stabilizer of D4, which I did have cut. And then you also need 2 pieces of D3, which I'm doing contrasting fabrics of. So this will be my exterior side and then my lining side of my slip pocket. Our key leash, which is also recommended to do out of a lightweight fabric since it will be folded a few times, and that will help reduce bulk. Along with another piece that will be lightweight fabric will be your snap sleeve to the pieces that I showed for our D, which could be a tablet sleeve. So this will be that top piece. And then for piece E, which is your drink sleeve, you will need to also use a lightweight fabric. You will have 2 of those. Those will be on the side of your bags. For your zipper pocket, you will need 4 pieces of linings, 2 pieces for your exterior front panel zipper, and then 2 more pieces for your interior zipper pocket. There's also a divider slip pocket. So you will need 2 pieces of lining fabric, which again, I did 2 pieces of contrasting fabric. There's also a zipper overlay, which you would want to use in a non-fraying fabric. You have 2 pieces of DD, which is our top panel lining for our interior. And then an A2 for our D-ring tab on the front panel. You will need 2 pieces of bias tape or 2 pieces that are non-fraying material to go over the edges and act as a binding. And then our piece C1, which is the bottom, very bottom base of your interior bag. And then you need 2 pieces of C2, which these pieces become your foldable part of the bag. So this will lift up and allow your bag to fold. But when your bag is open and in use, this will be the part of the bag that you will see the most. And you will also need 1 piece of firm stabilizer. I'm using the Sewfisticated Foam Premium. So this piece will end up going in between my 2 pieces of C2. And this will be the fold up part of the bag that gives it the structure, but then allows it to flap up and allow the bottom part of the bag to fold in. You also need 2 pieces of zipper tape with 2 pulls. The webbing, which will then cut into 5 different pieces. 2 really long pieces, which can depend on the length of the wearer. And those amounts are stated in the instructions. And then there's also a 1 smaller piece, which is for the luggage sleeve on the back. And then 2 other pieces, which will be your anchors that will hold your sliders. Now I added 3 inches, about 3 inches to mine. And I did this because my webbing is a slicker webbing and my sliders aren't just right. So when I put this webbing in my sliders and pull, it still is a little bit slippery. So when there's weight on my bag, it will shimmy. So I cut it longer to do this little trick to make more bulk in my slider so that my webbing doesn't slide through as much. So mine are a little bit longer than what's stated in the instructions, and I will show why as I'm making it. And I will also cover how it would normally be done so you don't get too confused. Hardware. You need 2 sliders that match your webbing width. I have 1.5 inch webbing, so these are 1.5 inch sliders. You just want to make sure that 1, you get the adjustable bar slider kind, and that you don't have too high of a opening between your slider, because that then depends on your webbing, will decide whether or not it really holds firm in there or if your webbing will slide. 1 inch D-ring, the 2 magnetic snaps, a swivel snap of 3 3/4 of an inch for your key leash, And then a set of cam snaps. There's an optional set amount of rivets for your outside of your zipper overlay for 2 of them. One for the bottom of your key leash and another one for the middle part of the dividing of the slip pocket. So I'm going to do all of those. And then I have my washers for my magnetic snaps. We are going to start sewing our VentureTote. If you have a logo tag, you will apply it in step 1 per the instructions, and you can do it in one of 2 places. You can do it on your front panel, in the middle, up above your slip pocket per the step 1, or you can do it on your slip pocket itself, depending on whether or not you have a fussy cut placement that you are trying to work around. Since I don't have a logo tag, I'm going to go ahead and take my 2 pieces of B and my B1, which is my exterior and my lining of my slip pockets, and I'm going to take those and place them right sides together along the top edge. And now I'm going to go ahead and sew across both of these with a 1/4 seam allowance. And now we are going to trim our seam allowance corners. And turn them right side out. And now we are going to top stitch along those 2 tops. And top stitch along those with a 1/8 seam allowance. And now these 2 are completed. We can set those aside for now. We are going to move on to our front panel zipper pocket. So you will need a piece of A1, which is your front zipper pocket lining, your one of your zippers and a pull. Cinch off our ends of our zipper. We're going to go ahead and place our zipper on. And then you're going to take one of your pieces of A1 with the right side up, along with the zipper facing up, and then with the zipper pulling closed to the left for right now. And we are going to base this on. We're going to base these two pieces together with a 1/8 seam allowance. Going to take our front panel and we're going to find the middle of our zipper box, and then the middle of our zipper lining with the zipper that we just made, and we are going to place those right sides together, make a sandwich of our zipper, and match that center point so that it's evenly dispersed between the zipper opening now. We are going to make the markings as stated in step 4 for our start and stop points along our zipper, which ends up being our seam allowance. Now I'm going to start at that point and stop at that point and sew along my zipper with a 3/8 seam allowance. Moving my zipper out of the way. Now we are going to go ahead and use scissors to cut a diagonal line into our exterior fabric. So you want to make sure that you move your zipper tape and lining out of the way. You want to go from the corner of your zipper box to your end of your stitches and not snipping into any of those stitches. Now you want to go ahead and take your lining and flip it back. Now we are going to go ahead and fold back our panels to expose those zippers. And you just line up your tabs, and then you're going to sew along that tab. Keep that straight up along there, just to make sure that you're boxed. Make a really nice smooth corner box on the end of your zipper. That, and then we'll go ahead and repeat on the other side. And essentially what's happening is that your seam allowance, what you sew, is essentially that 3/8 seam allowance, but you want to make sure from 3/8 from this edge, but you want to make sure that you're not going past that corner, so you can sew from there on up, making sure that your lining is pressed down out of the way. Now we're going to go ahead and sew along our zipper box with a 1/8 seam allowance. You want to ensure that your lining is up out of the way. And press down. One more. And then there's that. Moving on to step 6, we're going to go ahead and flip this over to the wrong side. Take our remaining piece of A1 lining, and you're going to match it up along the sides and the top. I'm just doing this to help ensure that I won't hopefully have a wavy zipper. We are going to trim the bottom so that they are the same size. To top stitch just along the zipper heart with that 1/8 seam allowance. And now we're going to go ahead and sew and close up our zipper pocket. You're going to sew around with a 5/8 seam allowance. Oh, now we can trim the zipper pocket lining down by half. I'm gonna singe the ends of the zipper tape just to be super safe. Now that is done. Now I'm gonna find the center bottom of my front panel. And also the center bottom of one of my slip pockets that I want for the front panel. And you're going to match those both right sides up. You can take two pieces of painter's tape at the top of your slip pocket just to help keep it from shifting. With your zipper pocket lining up out of the way, we are going to go ahead and sew down across the bottom and then back up the other side to based on our slip pocket. And we are going to use a 1/8 seam allowance. Now that is based on our slip pocket. And one of the things I didn't mention is that if you are using self-adhesive foam, which I did, I just added a layer of SF101 over top of it because my foam that I had wasn't sticking very well, so took care of that with layering it. So I placed that, but you want to make sure that you have your interfacing attached. Not your interfacing. You want to make sure that you have your stabilizer attached before placing on your slip pocket and webbing so that it's held down in place and it gives that extra stabilizer to your webbing. If you haven't already cut your webbing into your sections, you will do so per step 9. Okay. Now we are going to go ahead and start making our webbing pieces. As I stated in the supply overview, I made my webbing of the tightening strap a little bit longer. This one I made 3 inches longer because my webbing is a little bit more of a slippery side. And this one I did my test of putting in a piece of webbing and wrapping around the bar and then sliding in another piece of webbing. It was a little bit too easily to move for my taste, so I'm going to do a little trick to make that not as slippery. So this is where the webbing would have been, so this would have been your piece. I took the marking as per step 10. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide my slider on as I normally would. And in step 10, I want you to bring it right underneath that mark. Now what I'm going to do is flip my piece over, but give myself slack to where that's still in the middle, but allow it to where I can re-feed through this piece through looping it around. And I did it that way just so you can see that I still want my original webbing to meet on that line where it said. And in the back, I'm gonna have that. So now instead of 1 piece of webbing through that bar, you now have 2. And within that allows you to have a little bit more of, I don't know if I can do this one-handed. Trying to hold that bit into piece, but it allows you to have more tension within your that bar. Like, it will still slide, which you I don't say you need it to. You don't want it someone trying to manhandling it through there, but it gives that tension that you need. But when it's loosened up, you can then adjust the bar. But when it's pulled into that position, it doesn't move. So that's holding it. So that's how I get through with using thinner webbing. One of the things I didn't do, actually I might have off prepping it, is I'm gonna singe these ends, and I ended up, I leave so much extra on that end, like I left the 3 inches, so that way when I go to tuck this down, the extra bit that I added will still be under my box stitches, so that way I know that's secure and won't stick out. I'm just gonna clip these and hold it together. I'm gonna do it with the other one real quick. I'm going to show you how to quickly do this the easier way. So I put my webbing back in, And now I'm going to meet my back of my extra webbing to my extra webbing line. And now I'm going to take this tail end and feed it through the top, through the bottom, until I get that line over top of my bar. And now I can fold that down. Now these are ready to be added. Save this one for the back panel. Now, before we attach our webbing, we are going to want to make sure that our slip pocket is out of the way. Our zipper pocket is out of the way. I'm just gonna fold it up and tape it up. And now you can do your webbing placement. Okay, we are now going to attach our double-sided tape down the middle part of our webbing. And move that piece, and you can push that down. And we are going to align the middle of our webbing, which mine has a line down the middle of it, right down the edge of our slip pocket. Or you can use the pattern or the webbing placement on the pattern piece A. And then your slider will fall just below your top stitching of your zipper box. And then you are going to take and stitch on your webbing, making a 2-inch box just below the bottom part of your slider. Keep in mind to leave enough room for your zipper foot. I end up proportioning mine to where my 2-inch box fits about right in the middle of my X, but not perfectly, just so my middle of my box doesn't sit on the corner of that slip pocket. It will give it a little bit of room. So there's more down than up, more up than down. You just want to make sure that your X is secured and not in the middle of your slip pocket. So I went ahead and made my markings. Brighten them up a little bit. Made my markings of where my box across is going to go. And then I'm going to go ahead and stitch up, across, down, and then up diagonally, back across, down diagonally, and then across this, and finish down. And all that with a 1/8 seam allowance. Now at my slip pocket, I'm just gonna back tack a little bit just to help reinforce that area. I'm going to go down and I'm going to stop at my marking. I'm gonna first do my first part of box stitch. Just take a ruler to line up my stitching. I'm just hand cranking so I can ensure that I end up in the same stitch line. But now I'm gonna go again. And make sure my ruler is making that straight line, and then I can move my piece to find that corner. And roll across. And now and there's the first box, and it just on all my layers of add it, so I could do the extra piece of ball. Now when I have my webbing, it won't slide through as easy. And definitely take more force than bending my webbing. Oops. So okay. And now we are going to go ahead and take another piece of double-sided tape along our edge of our other side of our slip pocket. And we're going to take one of our long pieces of webbing for the strap. Singe our ends. Now we're going to line this up with the middle of our webbing to the middle of our pocket. Now for this side, we are going to make a zipper box that's 2 3/4 big. You can go ahead and take the measurements from 14 in order to figure out where to do your 2 3/4 sized box. I personally like to measure my distance from the bottom of this square box and go ahead and transfer that off to the other side, and then from that distance measure up the 2 3/4 for my box. And that just so I can ensure that just in case I measured down wrong or anything on this side, that my boxes are stopping in the relatively same area. But this should have close to the right markings that it was in step 14. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do the same steps I did for securing on the webbing on the other side to this side. And all I'm doing is lining up my needle to my ruler, making sure that my ruler is straight, which I use my end of my desk to be able to help it straight. And then I just move my bag so that my intersection of my stitching and my line is in that point. And then I know that's straight. So then I can put my pressure foot back down and just sew straight. Now that your webbings are attached, you can go ahead and unattach your things that was holding up your zipper pocket. Now their panel is completed. I'm going to set this off to the side. Now we can move on to our back panel. Take our back panel and we are again going to find our bottom center point. Panel, and then along with the bottom center point of our slip pocket. We're going to place those both right sides up and align those points. Stick some painter's tape up the top to keep your slip pocket from moving around. And then we are going to go ahead and baste it down the sides, the side, the bottom, and then back up the other side like we did with our front panel. Now we're going to take the piece of webbing for our luggage sleeve and quickly singe our ends. And then you are going to place this down on the measurement stated in step 16. And then if you do want to change the height of it, just make sure that your ends of your webbing are both just outside of your slip pocket, so that way your webbing handles will cover those ends. You can either use the painter's tape or you can go ahead and baste these two sides real quick. Due to the size of the panel and how firm my panels are, I did the basting so that way it will help keep that in place more than the tape will. And now we can repeat the same steps that we did for the front panel. Be placing our tape down and then matching this up along the edge of the pocket to the middle of your webbing, or again you can take the placement from the pattern piece A. Now we are going to want to do the 2-inch box on this side like we did with our front panel. So we will go ahead and repeat the steps 11 through 15. Now, to reinforce these areas at the starting of my luggage sleeve, I'm going to back tuck, just to give it a little extra reinforcement. And again, do the same when I get to the top of my slip pocket. There's that one. Now I'm gonna do it opposite side. Put tape up the side of the pocket. Take our final piece of webbing, singe the ends. And then again, line up the center of the webbing with the edge of that pocket, or you can take the placement from pattern piece A. And now this side is the side that we're making the 2 3/4 box one. This is to help give more structure and support to your bag handle so it's not all floppy. And then we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing for our box stitches. Now the back panel is completed. Your slip pocket and luggage sleeve. Okay, and now we are going to make our D-ring attachment. So you'll need your D-ring and then your piece of A2. You will go ahead and place it on the wrong side. We are going to find our center. Meet in the long edges to the center. Now we can top stitch around that. You can slip that on your D-ring. And you can base this if you want. And then you're going to want to place this on the side where your zipper and slider are. And then you want to place it about 3/4 of an inch away. And that way, when everything's all there, that your stuff has room to dangle. Place that one. Now I'm gonna go ahead and tuck my webbing into my front pocket so that it doesn't get caught in anything. Now we can take our top accent piece AA and align it to the top part of our fabric of our panel. If you are using a directional print, make sure that you notice what side is the top and the bottom, because we are going to measure down from the top of the raw edge 3/4 of an inch. This will be the top part of your bag prep for the drop lining. Now, I'm pulling out really good double-sided tape for this. And we're going to go ahead and place the double-sided tape along the top edge. And then we want to align it down to that marking that we made. Now this part is very, very crucial because this will ensure proper alignment during the drop-in lining method. Gets helpful if I pulled off the cover ring all the way. There we go. That's one. Do my other one while I have this tape out right now. The awesome tape off to the side. Hang off the side, and now we want to attach the leftover raw edge to the top of our panel. Those we are going to sew with a 3/8 seam allowance. that's joined, we want to go ahead and snip our corners to help reduce bulk. Now we are going to press up our seam allowance away from the panel. So you want to keep this facing up. And then we are going to top stitch along this upper panel piece. And that attached. And we're going to repeat the same thing for the back panel. Again, we are going to join them with a 3/8 seam allowance. Snip our corners. And again, press that seam allowance towards the top. And now top stitch with a 1/8. And there's this panel. Now that we are done attaching both of our top panels to our main body panels, we are going to do our base assembly. So you'll need both of those panels along with piece C, which is our base. Now we are going to take first one of our panels and place our fabric's right sides together along the long edge of the base. And now we're going to sew along this edge with a 3/8 seam allowance. We just want to make sure that you're not getting your webbing. And then we can trim our seam allowance corners to help reduce bulk. Now, if you are using a lightweight material, we are going to press the seam up towards the panel. But if you were using a heavier weight material, like vinyl on your full exterior, then you would want to press this towards the bottom. Ensuring that your seam is pressed up for lightweight or down for heavier weight. We're going to then go ahead and top stitch along whatever side meets your fabric type. So you're going to go ahead and top stitch either across the top part of the panel for lightweight or across the bottom part of the panel for heavier weight, just depending on your fabric base. Make sure that seam is pressed towards the correct way. Mine is up. And there's one. And we are going to take our back panel and place that with the right sides together of the other edge of your base to the back panel. And again with the 3/8 seam allowance. Once again, we are going to press open the seam towards whatever way your fabric base is required. Pressing up again. Now your second base is going to be a bit, or your second top stitch is going to be a little bit more challenging, just because you gotta get the panel in there too. And there's our finished panel. Now here is what the panel will look like now with our two exteriors and our base connected. And again, make sure that my webbings are tucked in and out of the way. And there's our panels. Bring it the right sides together. I like to get this line. I'm going to do one side at a time. So I'm going to hold this pinched. And I'm going to bring this and pinch and make a little sandwich. And go up the side of my bag. Ooh, that came untaped. And meet my tops. And also make sure that edge seam there meets. Work my way down. Now, before you get all the way down to where your base is, because this is how you make your inverted V base, you want to make sure that your seams of your bottom are meet, and then this is flat and snug. I'm gonna put a clip here, and then another there, and then that's that one. Now you can go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So a different view. This is your base. This is your base. So you want to tuck that down and in, meeting your bottom seams. And then make sure this is flat and even. Meeting those side seams. And make sure that you have your tops folded back down if they happen to spring back up, like mine did. If you are doing the birthing method of this bag, then these would be staying up and you would just sew straight across them. But I am going to do the drop in for this, and I'll show a little bit of the birthing from the other bag that I did. One of the other things I like to do is to take my pair of hemostats and go in from the bottom of the bag and just make sure that that seam is pushed down all the way or in. So that way when you're doing your seam allowance, that all of this part of the interior fabric is also flat. Now we're going to go ahead and sew up the two sides with 3/8 seam allowance, but before I do that, I'm going to throw in just a few little basting stitches along these sides where my panels meet, so that seam doesn't shift and I will have a nice meeting of my bags along the side. And just before we start sewing, we want to make sure that our webbing is out of the way, which is why I tuck it into the pocket to hopefully help that. And now we're going to do the same thing to the other side. And then to help reinforce your stitches, you can sew another row of stitches 1/8 of an inch away, just from starting below your panel, your top upper panel. And that's just so you can be able to press open that seam. Reinforced stitching's done. We did not do the second row of stitches up at the top, so that way you can press the seam open when you do your drop-in lining. You want to make sure that you are happy with your stitching, and then you can go ahead and turn your panel right side out, which if you are using a vinyl, you can use a hair dryer to slightly warm it up to make turning it out easier. I'm just going to turn it in my lap. And that's why we did a thing of basting stitches. There's our one, and would it be kind of in the fabric to get that V pop out. And there's our finished exterior. We are going to move on to our interior assembly. So we will need our pieces of DD, which is our top panel lining, and then our 2 sets of snaps. I'm first going to go ahead and draw my lines on both of the tops of my pieces. I'm first going to go ahead and draw my lines. So that was the marking stated in step 24. So that way when we fold it down, this then becomes our seam allowance amount of the 3/8. Oh, I'm so gonna pull out my good tape again and lay that along the top edge. Now the only reason why, if you can even see that I have 2 lines on this, is because of the way I need this piece to be oriented for my top. I drew a line on the wrong side at first. This is the top, so that flower doesn't get cut off as much. Actually, any. And then do the same. Now you can either take the measurements in to find the placement for your snaps, or you take your pattern piece D, and I like to take my washer to it and center that, and then make my lines, and then I'll cut into the fabric of where the placements are, and those then become where I can mark to cut my fabric. That's my top edge. My top edge, and measuring from that. And now I can take my scissors and make little snips on those lines. Now, this is water resistant canvas, so it shouldn't fray. But if you have a fraying material, you want to put some fray stop or fabric tack, something to help close in those seams so that way they don't fray. I like putting it always just so I don't end up forgetting. And then you're going to pick a panel to do both female snaps on one side and male snaps both on another side. And then you also will want a little piece of stabilizer. Just grabbed a scrap piece of foam. That's not what I just almost did. You know, again, make sure you're putting in the same type of snap on the same panel. So both of these are my male snaps. Now we take those and cover those with some masking tape. And that panel is done. Now you can move on to your other one. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my female snaps in on this side. Again, some tape. This will just help ensure that your little prongs don't make a hole in any fabric. Now just quickly ensure that they did line up. Now, before we place these aside, we do need to remove our cover to our double-sided tape and to fold down that top raw edge to meet the line that we drew. Now, these steps are very important because this will ensure the lineup during your final assembly when you insert your drop lining. Now these can be placed off to the side. Now we're going to do our key leash. So you'll need piece F, which is a lightweight material, along with your 3/4 of an inch D-ring, or not D-ring, 3/4 of an inch swivel hook going to go ahead and flip this to the wrong side. And we're going to mark the end of our key leash with 3/4. So this is I want my print to go this way, not saying it won't matter too much, but so I have my end side of my key leash down here. And we're going to do that same marking. 1 or 2 longer edges. And put double-sided tape on the one short edge, and then along both of those longer markings. That's crooked. I'm going to move our short edge first and then fold to the line. There we go. Now we're going to fold our 2 longer edges down to those lines. Now, so you're going to fold this in half. You can either do it that way and kind of have those little ends sticking out, or what I like to do is to take them and open up this seam a little bit and just press it on in, and then do the same thing on this side and just kind of press that little seam open and in. So then that way when you fold it in half, all of those seams are hidden inside of your seam allowance. So now you can continue folding all the way up. You can either do a piece of double-sided tape along that, or just clip. So then you can figure out what side you want your front of your key leash to be. I like this side. I'm gonna measure up 3/4. I'm gonna slide my key leash on and then fold it back. There's my line I made, so I'm gonna put my key leash there, and I'm gonna fold this back on the opposite side from what I want my front to be. So there's my front. And now we're going to go ahead and top stitch along this with a 1/8 seam allowance, and then you're going to go ahead and get that in your 1/8 seam allowance across here, and then you can place an optional rivet in the middle of this box, which I will do. I'm just gonna do all my rivets at one point. Top stitch around this with the 1/8 seam allowance. finished key leash. We can set this aside. Right, now we're going to go ahead and take our piece F1, which is our snap sleeve. And we're going to mark our center line. And then also our other center. And then we want to place a piece of stabilizer about 1/4 of an inch away from the bottom middle. That will give us some seam allowance room. You can either use double-sided tape or just fold in and use clips of your edges, your long edges to the middle. On the other side. Fold in half. We can go ahead and top stitch around this with that 1/8 seam allowance. And now I'm gonna go ahead and place my snap down here, which we want to find. I'm gonna do 5/8 of an inch up. 1, 2, 3, 4, into the middle of the piece. And that's where our cam snap will go. And I'm going to hold off placing on my cam snap until I'm over with my press. Next up is our divider pocket. So you're going to need both of your pieces of D2. So you are actually going to keep these wrong sides together. So this is right side, that's the right side. Both of these are the wrong sides. And we are going to baste along the top edge of the two fabrics with a 1/8 seam allowance. And that is because these are going to be covered with a binding. Take one of our pieces of binding and lay that across the top edge. Now you can top stitch with a 1/4 seam allowance. trim off your excess binding. There's our divided slip pocket. I put this off to the side. Now for our big slip pocket that has the snap to it. And you'll need your 2 pieces of D3 and then your optional D4 stabilizer, which I adhered my foam since I'm going to have this for a device sleeve. Again, place our fabrics wrong sides together. And we are going to top stitch, no, not top stitch. We're going to baste along the top edge. Hold these 2 together. That, and you can either take the measurement from step 28 and measure down for your cam snap, or you can take your pattern piece and on your and then on your exterior fabric from the top edge center, you can make your placement. I don't know if it's really sure. For the cam snap, and then our female snap will be going into this. Female snap. Looks like I put all snapping stuff long enough. So I'm going to go ahead and cam snap that, and also whatever side you want your front of your snap to be is your outer part of your snap, of your cam snap, and then your male snap goes on the back side. That one. And then I'm also going to make the marking for my rivet in the middle of this. My rivet placement. Now I need to pull out my press and press these. We are going to go ahead and place our male snap onto our strap. So there's that one. Now, female snap. We have our male snap on our snap sleeve and our female on our panel, or not panel, divider pocket. So this would be our snap sleeve, and I just snap that on in so that I don't lose it. Now I'm going to do our rivet. And punch punch out my hole first. My rivet goes in, my cap. And then there's it. Now that our cam snaps are attached, you can go around and baste around the perimeter with that 1/8 seam allowance, enclosing your stabilizer inside. And now we can take our binding and place that along the top edge. And we're on top stitch with a 1/4 seam allowance. That. And we can place this off to the side. For the zipper pocket assembly for the interior zipper pocket, you are going to need a piece of D1, your zipper tape, and your pull. Go ahead and singe my ends of my zipper real quick. I just pull on. Okay, and then with this right side up and your zipper right side up, you're going to sew with a 3/16 of an inch. And turn this where the right side of the zipper faces the wrong side of the lining. Why is it? We're going to top stitch along the seam with a 1/8 seam allowance. We're going to take our remaining zipper pocket lining and have that right side up and place again the zipper right side up, and this right here is the wrong side of this one. But our panel that we're attaching is right side up, and our zipper is facing right side up. Repeat the step. So we are going to sew this on with a 3/16 seam allowance. Again, we're going to press that seam down so then we can top stitch in the zipper pocket with a 1/8 seam allowance. We can go ahead and set this aside for now while we prepare our zipper overlay. Now, if you have a lot of fritty kind of material, you can just slightly trim at an angle and it'll help take away those little fuzzes. Or you can take a lighter and just lightly cinch and it won't take away any of the fuzzies that would stick out. You can either edge coat this or use an acrylic pen for a nicer finish. I'm going to go ahead and take double-sided tape. To the top. And the bottom. Of these. We're going to take one of our piece D, which is our interior main panel lining. And we are going to measure down from the center middle of our panel the amount stated in step 32. We can take our middle of our upper middle, the top half of our zipper overlay so that we can center it. Remove our covering from our double-sided tape. You will want to make sure that your zipper box is even across the top. And now we're going to sew around the perimeter, the outer perimeter of our zipper overlay with a 1/8 seam allowance. If you have a tag, you can place it under the zipper overlay. Actually, let's see how that works with this one. It's a thick tag, but let's see what happens. I'll sew around with a 1/8 seam allowance. And I'm gonna pull through that pit. And off in that same hole you start it with, and pull through your stitches. Tie this off. And we can carefully cut out our zipper, our box for a zipper. I'm not cutting out too much. I essentially just cut out enough so that my you don't end up seeing the lining through the opening. And we're going to take our pocket that we made and place double-sided tape along the top edge and bottom edge. And first attach the bottom side of our pocket. So I'm going to remove the tape cover. I'm going to center that in the middle. You can do your top one. And we want to ensure our top pocket lining is up out of our sewing area and that our bottom part is fully down. We are now going to just sew along the bottom portion with a 1/8 seam allowance. that one through. Pull these ends through. Fold her. Go ahead and fold the pocket lining down. Flip the bottom edges into place, just so it doesn't shift too much. And now we can finish off our box stitch by going around the 2 short sides and the top edge with a 1/8 seam allowance. And dropped it right back in the same hole that it ended off on. One more stitch. And back into the very first stitch. And leave some tail. So we can pull the strings through and tie them off. You'll want to turn over your zipper pocket and turn over your paddle, and then trim the excess lining. Okay. Remove our panel out of the way. And we're going to sew along and around with a 5/8 seam allowance. Now we can trim the pocket lining down by half. That is done. And then flip up my zipper pocket lining and pin it up out of the way now so I don't forget. Now with our zipper pocket lining up out of the way, we are going to attach our dividing slip pocket. Fine. The center of this pocket real quick. Now you can baste this on and around with that 1/8 seam allowance. That will be my middle of my divider pocket. I'm gonna go ahead and baste around this with that 1/8 seam allowance first. Now I can sew up the middle to make my dividing pocket. You're gonna go ahead and sew up and then back down, keeping your stitches 1/8 of an inch apart. If you are doing a rivet, then you want to stop right below your bias tape. If you aren't going to do a rivet here, then you are going to sew all the way up. I'm going to stop right underneath my binding so I can do that rivet. I just did a little back tack there to give a little extra security. And there's that. Now I can go ahead and place my rivet right there. So along with placing a rivet here, after I put my rivet there, I'm going to go ahead and release my zipper lining, and I'm going to place a rivet here and here per the zipper overlay pattern piece. Per this zipper pattern piece. So here and here. Put this back up so I don't put my rivet through it. And then because I already have my punch die in, I'm gonna go ahead and put down my pocket lining real quick. Before I forget, putting this zipper panel lining up out of my way again. And our rivet and undo the pocket lining. My rivet on the sides. And there's that panel. Now we can go back to sewing. Now we are going to baste on our key leash. You can do it on either side, but preferably you want it on the opposite side from the way that your zipper is closed. So mine closes this way, so I'm going to put the key leash over here. Your key leash marking is on step 38 of the pattern. Baste that. Now you want to take one of your upper panels and place it right sides together with the two raw edges. This is my edge that's coming unstick with the folded piece. Now I'm going to sew across this with a 3/8 seam allowance. Trim our seam allowance corners. I'm going to press the seam up. And then top stitch along that with the 1/8 seam allowance. Just make sure your zipper pocket's out of the way. Your key leash isn't getting under anything. This interior panel is completed. Our other interior panel, right side up. And take the slip pocket that we made and also place that right side up. I like to just find my center top. So then I can do my center middle. And I also snap it so that I don't put too much strain on that. And I can ensure that way that my snap will always line up. Baste. Baste on our snap. Now we're going to baste around the pocket. And now we're going to repeat step 39 with our top panel. So again, that was attaching it, sewing it with a 3/8 seam allowance, and then pressing the seam up, top stitching. And done. So 3/8. Trim corners. Press with the seam up. And then top stitch. And now both of your interior panels are done and can be placed aside for the interior assembly. Now we will make our drink sleeves. So we will take our 2 pieces of E1 and we'll take them separately, and you'll place them right sides together with a hamburger fold. You're going to sew that with a 1/4 seam allowance. Trim your corners. And right side out. And press. Okay, so now we can do a top stitch of 1/8 along the bottom and the tops of each. Now those are done. Now that our 2 drink sleeves are done, we're gonna push those off to the side, and we need our 2 side gusses, which are piece E. And on the wrong side of them, you want to mark down the amount that's in step 43. And that will be your folded down piece again. double-sided tape along the top edge. Once you remove that backing to your double-sided tape, you fold that edge down to your marking. Now you can flip to the right side of your pattern piece. For your markings for your drink sleeve, you can either transfer your markings over from pattern piece E or take the measurement from step 44. You will then want to align the bottom of your drink sleeve to that marking. And I'm gonna base that on. And then repeat from the same side. Now this does not lay flat on the piece because it is a drink sleeve. Base this one. Same thing goes for this side. Line the bottom of your drink sleeve to the marking and then baste. And again, line your bottom to the marking and baste it on. There's that. Again, it doesn't lay flat. And leave you room for your drinks. Now your side panels with your drink sleeves are now complete, and you can set these aside. Now for our base and stabilizer, 2 pieces of C2, and place them right sides together. We're going to sew along the 2 shorter edges and 1 of the longer edges. And so with a we're going to sew the 2 short edges with a 3/4 seam allowance. And then we're going to go ahead and sew across our bottom with a 3/8 seam allowance. Now, to make my corners lay a little nicer, I ended up doing a slant hit stitch on the sides. This is the bulk on our corners. Now we are going to adhere our stabilizer to whichever side you want as your your bottom. Mine are exactly the same, but if you were doing a different print, then, or a different color, then you would want to make sure that you're adhering this to the actual bottom piece. I'm going to turn this sides out. I'm going to go ahead and use my hemostats so I can push out my corners and get those nice. Go ahead and press this out, make sure it's all even. Now once you have turned it out and pressed flat, if you didn't use a adhesive stabilizer, then if you used a stabilizer like Pelletex, you can go ahead and insert that now. And then we're going to top stitch around the whole perimeter with a 1/8 seam allowance. And there's that. Now we are going to take our remaining piece C1 and we are going to place it right side down along the side that you want for your bottom. So this is my bottom side of my base. And then we have this. I'm gonna grab my other tote so I can show you what I mean. This part right here is this part. This underside would be this. And then when we flip this like this, so it's the actual bottom of the base and not foldable, that is this side. So this is the side, if you used an adhesive stabilizer, this is the side that it's not attached to. This is your underside, and then this is the right side of the fabric, matching that. So I'm going to find my center point. The center points of the raw edges. I'm going to match those up. Now I'm going to baste these two together. Now we're moving on to our interior final assembly. We are going to take our panel that has our zipper overlay. And we are going to take the bases that we just assembled, and align those along the bottom raw edge, sandwiching that smaller stabilized base piece in between all of them. And just keep in mind that note this stabilized base piece is smaller than the bottom base, which is why I centered it. Okay, and you're going to sew with a 3/8 seam allowance. And just make sure that your key leash is out of the way. I'm going to snip our seam allowance corners. Now, I'm going to flip the base stabilizer lining downwards and press the seam allowance towards the main panel lining. So we are going to press this down, but this seam that we created up. Now we're going to top stitch along our divider pockets with a 1/8 seam allowance. Now we are going to go ahead and repeat the same thing for the other panel. Want to flip your foldable. You want to flip up this base so you can see the bottom base, and then put these right sides together. Now we're going to sew with that 3/8 seam allowance. Snip the corners. Now again, we're going to press that seam up towards the panel. It's going to be a little bit more trickier. And then we're going to top stitch along our slip pocket. And that's completed. We're going to take our side panel and attach it to the bottom base, centering it. And we're gonna sew 3/8 seam allowance. Now, I personally find it easier to attach the other side before folding up and attaching the long sides. I'm going to repeat that sewing of 3/8 seam. We can match up our sides. Going to start out with a 3/8 seam allowance until we get to where our seam of our top panel meets the bottom, and then we're going to increase to a 1/2 inch seam allowance. This ensures a nice tight fitting lining. Repeat on the opposite side. And start off with 3/8. And then increase to 1/2 inch. You want to make sure that you keep your foldable base out of the way. That is done. There's one side. Now to do the other. Last side. Until you get to this seam, and then you increase to the 1/2 inch. Now we're going to trim the top seam allowance from the top part of the panel, just down by half. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now our interior lining is ready for the final assembly. Now we are ready for our final assembly. Now that our lining is done and our exterior is done. We've trimmed down the top, just the top portion of this seam allowance by half. We want to take double-sided tape to all of our seams, just to help them stay open. And you will do this to your exterior also. So you'll and you will open those up just to help the seam stay pressed open when working with putting your two linings together. And you will do that to other exterior edge and to all of your linings. Showed one of each. I'm gonna quickly fast forward to the others. Now that that's done, we are going to find the center of our side panels. And it helps if you line up your magnet snaps, just to ensure that you're getting your actual center from where they are and not just your center from your seams. As then if you do the center of your seams, if if these aren't in the exact right position, then it could end up throwing off your connecting seams. Like just say by chance this was over and like you're saying that this is your seam, then your magnet snaps wouldn't line up. So it helps to match these up and then find the center from that. Now, I also like to then meet those points and find my centers of my bag. Just so that way I can also center the panels too. Now we can take our exterior, and as I go around clipping, I'm also going to be re-pushing back down my seam allowance as it came up off the tape. For the direction of which way to put in your interior, it really doesn't matter which way you do it. I prefer, especially if you're going to use this for any devices, to have this slip pocket on the back side of my bag, so that way when I'm carrying it, my device is closer to me. And then slip that in. And then that center point that we made on our side panel is what becomes and lines up to the center of our exterior side seam that we butterfly open. Find my center front. And then I can work on folding back down my seam allowances. Making sure that my interior lining part stays butterflied open. Should have did the press seam with that one too. Okay. just ensure that everything closes up and lines up great. Now we are going to go ahead and top stitch along the outside with a 1/8 inch seam allowance around the top. You do want to ensure that your webbing does not get in the way. You don't stitch into it. And also just make sure any key leashes or snap also stay out of the way. You can either top stitch on this way with your panels facing up, or you can turn the bag inside out so you can top stitch your actual outer fabric versus this being your bobbin thread. Whichever way you end up top stitching, just make sure that your bobbin thread matches the side of the fabric that's down. I did black stitching all throughout mine, so that's what it's going to be either which way. Now I'm going to start my stitches off to my side. Where I started, and I can pull through the through all the threads. And then we can crooked knot this. All of our threads are the same length, and now I'm going to it's interesting doing that through the camera. And And a nice clean finish. Now, what's left to do is to take our webbing and thread it through our adjusters. And then fold our bottom ends twice, and we'll stitch across that with a 1/8 seam allowance, and then also do that on our other side. Make sure that your webbing ends are cinched. And then fold backwards. Increase my tension because I'm just doing webbing, and if I don't do that, my webbing won't be nice. Okay. That is our finished VentureTote. I hope you enjoyed making this as much as I did. Okay, so now I'm going to show you really quick how your lining panels will come together if you are doing the birthing method. You can see that I have my line from the drop-in method drawn on because I was unsure about whether or not I was going to birth this bag or do the drop-in method. And the way this bag is turning out for this particular one, I am going to go ahead and birth it. So I'm going to show you how to do the sides of the lining for the birthing method, which would be the same for your exterior. Instead of doing the fold down, you're just going to go ahead and match up your sides, and then you are going to for the lining, you are going to start sewing with a 3/8 seam allowance down to your start of this panel, and then you're going to increase to a 1/2 inch seam allowance so that your lining fits a little snugger. If you are making your exterior one, since I didn't show this process of joining the sides of the exterior, you would just sew down with the 3/8. I'm going to get to that, and then I'm going to go ahead and increase my stitching. And then since we are doing the lining, you want to make sure that you aren't going to sew in your folded base for your stabilized base. I went ahead and clipped that up and over so that it's out of my sewing area. But you just want to be aware of that when you're stitching. So now I'm going to continue going down the side with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So then your lining will look like this. And this is the interior zipper pocket that I left open. So I'm gonna go ahead and burst through this. I did stick my key leash in there just so it didn't get caught in any seams either. Okay, and for the birthing method, you're going to go ahead and place your lining inside of your bag so that your lining and your exterior are right sides together. You want to find the middle of your side panels and ensure that when you line up your magnet snaps that is your centered point. So finding your centers is easier to do before you turn it right side out. And then I also found my center of my middle of my front and back panels, and I also have flattened out my seams. And then I did the same thing for my exterior panel, flattened out my side seams and found my centers of my front and back panels. Now I'm going to go ahead and meet them all together. I'm going to have my slip pocket on the back side of my bag, and then my divider pocket is going to be on the front side of my bag. You want to make sure that your webbing's out of the way. I like to tuck mine into their pockets. I also like to ensure that this is snapped down so it stays out of things. My key leash is still inside of my pocket, so that way that is good. You want to ensure if you're doing birthing that you do not close the bottom part of your zipper pocket so you can birth through it. Go ahead and meet. Well, it's done. We're going to go ahead and sew around the top with the 3/4 seam allowance and just ensuring that our seams stay pressed flat open. Okay. another row of stitches that's 1/8 of an inch away from those stitches. Since I'm using vinyl. Now that we have stitched all the way around the top, we are going to go ahead and burst through this pocket. Make a box first. If you have a vinyl that you're using on the exterior, you might want to go ahead and warm your vinyl up with a hairdryer to make bursting easier. Now I'm going to stick my lining down into the bag and smooth out the crease. Place a few little clips around, and then I'm just going to pin those within my seam allowance of where my top stitching will go, so that it will hide it. Will hide any of the little marks left by the clippies. I'm just going to really quickly make sure that my snaps lined up the middle of it. Okay, then you're going to go ahead and go around and top stitch with a 1/8 seam allowance. You can do this one of two ways. You can turn your bag to where it's inside out so that you're top stitching this actual part of it with this side up, or you can lift your machine or have a cylinder arm so you can top stitch this, or you can just top stitch from this way. Just make sure that whatever your bobbin thread is matches your fabric that's on the bottom side. And I'm just going to top stitch the lining. Make sure everything stays out of the way. again, make sure your webbing is out of your sewing area. There's that. Let's line up, and then since we first pull out our pocket. Now, I just left the bottom completely open. So I'm going to flatten open those seams and then flatten down. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stitch across the whole pocket. I'm just keeping with that 3/8 of a seam allowance of what I'm folding and down one in. And then I'm going to stitch across this with a 1/8 seam allowance. Hook. That is done. Thanks for sewing the adventure tote with me today. I hope you enjoyed making this tote as much as I did. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks so much. Bye.